Thanks everybody, and I think this is going to be a fun one today on Gen AI, and it's going to be really, really applicable, I think, to apply. So that was kind of my goal here, was to make something that we could all kind of apply right out of the box. And Gen AI, big buzzword, everybody's talking about it, but I wanted to show something that's not just something that it takes a lot of heavy uplifting. I wanted to show something that you could implement right now in a matter of an hour. So that was my goal here. So as you see, I'm gonna be showing a whole bunch of sort of applications for this, but the result of this thing, this is actually an open source project that was produced by another one of my colleagues here at AWS. So I'll give you the link at the end so you can take a look at that. But so this is something you can do right now. Super fun. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about AI ML today, just so we kind of have our terms defined. I'm going to talk about Amazon Bedrock, which is our newest offering in the AI ML services on AWS. I'm going to talk about Amazon Kendra briefly, just to remind everybody what it was. If you caught my Amazon Kendra session many months ago, I was gonna look when that was, but it was quite a few months ago. But you can go back and look at that, and a lot of the kind of basis for this demo is based on Kendra, so you can kind of refresh yourself on that if you want. And then I'm going to talk about specifically what the RAG technique in Gen AI is, and that's Retrieval Augmented Generation. So that's, and I'll talk about what that means. And then I'm going to show you a demo of how this, of this actual application running, and talk about kind of some of the uses of it. So just quickly to define our terms, AI, it's hard to kind of pin down the definition for AI, but I just call AI anything that is any program that is smart, that kind of acts like or can kind of mimic human intelligence. It says here, but I just say anything that's smart. Another step down, machine learning is where you actually use another program or another piece of logic to train a program to be smart. So that can be anything from statistical methods, like building statistical weighting methods and things like that, all the way to neural networks, Bayesian networks, Markov processes. There's a million of them, but anything that uses a program to train another program, that's what I call machine learning. Deep learning is the kind of next step down. That's where you've got a deep multi-layer neural network now that's been trained also by a program, so it's machine learning, but it performs highly human tasks. So that would be speech recognition, image recognition, image generation, text generation, all those things. Those are all kind of in the subset of the deep learning model. And then generative AI obviously is where you're actually generating text and generating you can generate sound and music and images and all kinds of stuff. So that's where we are. The generative AI is the hot topic. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The AI ML stack on AWS. I've shown this slide a bunch, so I don't want to get too deep on this, but you can see that at the bottom we've got our infrastructure. That's where you kind of run models. In the middle bottom, you got SageMaker. We've talked about that before. That's the full service AI ML, all the way from no code to full code, Jupyter Notebook based. This thing literally, if you're a data scientist, this is where you're this is where you're living. Bedrock is our new addition to this this capability, though. This is where we've added large language models, but in a managed environment. So unlike SageMaker, where you're building, training, or augmenting models and you're running them yourselves on your own on your own kind of AWS EC2 instances or Inferentia or whatever. Bedrock, the models are already running for you, so you're just accessing the models here. So you're not having to pay for a running model 24/7, which can be expensive, but you're also and so you're paying per use of the model, basically. So it's super, super cost effective, especially when you're talking about in your kind of experiment, discovery, development process. So just in the time I've been playing around with this demo, it's cost me very, very little on my account that I use. So it's super, super cost effective, and it allows you to just jump right in with both feet immediately and start playing around. So again, this is just a recap of basically what I just said. You've got our infrastructure at the bottom. You got SageMaker to build and run your own models. You got managed service of Bedrock, where you're just using already running models, so very cost effective. And you got Code Whisperer at the top as an application for generating code in your IDE, which I also did a session on that, if you remember. But with Bedrock, the key differentiator with Bedrock, as opposed to some of the other competitor services out there, is that Bedrock does not use your data in any way to train third-party models. So your data is not, your intellectual property, in other words, is not going out your doors and being used to train other people's models. So that's super important, and that's going to be a differentiator as corporations go forward and adopt this generative AI technology. So Bedrock supports a whole bunch of different models. Here's some of them. Amazon has its own large language model. AI21's got a great model. Anthropic Claude's a model that that Amazon is heavily invested in. And then you got other models that, like I said, can build, say, images and art. And that's this Stable Diffusion model is one of those. And I'll show you really, really quickly how that what that looks like. Like I said, if you don't want to, or if that managed model experience isn't what you want, you can always use SageMaker. This is the full data science AI ML platform. So you can take those same models that I just mentioned there, drop them and use them in SageMaker and modify them, retrain them, all kinds of stuff. So you got full control if you want to drop into SageMaker. What we're going to talk about today is this concept of retrieval augmented generation. And what that means is, rather than training a model on your, say, specific domain or your corporate knowledge base or whatever, you're just you're using an existing large language model for its capabilities of English and summarization and contextualization and all that kind of stuff. You're using the model for that, but you're feeding the data now from a document set or a knowledge set that you are managing yourself. So I'll show you kind of what that flow looks like. But if you think about it this way, if you've ever played around with these large language models and you ask it a question and it says, I don't know an answer to that. Well, in this particular case, you can feed that that document set that you have that's your knowledge base. It can come off of SharePoint. It can come off of S3. It can come off of just a file system. But you can feed those documents using a search engine, which I'll show you using Kendra here. But using a search engine, you can feed that information into your large language model and let the large language model then summarize that information and present it to you in a human readable form. So that's the beauty of this whole thing. It's that you don't have to train large language models, which is why you can implement this like literally today on a document set that you have. So if you've got information, you can feed that document set in and you can use it on a large language model that otherwise would not have known anything about your the domain of information that you're talking about. So today I'm going to show, like I said, I'm going to show a chatbot interface plus a Kendra enterprise search engine with some uploaded documents that I put into it, and then a Bedrock large language model. So here's kind of the flow. So I'm using my pen here to augment what we're kind of looking at. So you've got, let's say you've got your internal set of documents here. I said corporate documents, but heck, you can do this on an internal set of information that you just have at home. It doesn't have to be that. You could literally do this on top of your previous income tax returns, or your home documentation you've got. I've got all these documents I've just accumulated over my years, and I was actually thinking about this. I could actually do searches over that document set, which would be super cool. I didn't try that, but it would totally work. That internal document set is uploaded in this particular case into S3. This, like I said, this S3 can just be one of the sources of information that Kendra uses, but it can use SharePoint, Jira, Confluence, file systems. There's a whole set of connectors for Kendra that you can use. Then Kendra at a I was going to try and draw a little clock here. I don't know if I can do this. Kendra can pull on a regular basis or on a triggered basis. It can build that index and rebuild that index. And that's another key, by the way, for this whole thing is that, again, you're not having to train your model when you upload new documents. You're just uploading new documents in. You ask Kendra to rebuild the index, and it's all ready to go. That knowledge base is ready to go. So in this case, I've uploaded documents into S3, and now Kendra is going to build that index here. And then at some point later, we got our users here. They're going to come by and they're going to. Oh, I realized that my pen is not showing up on the screen. Is it? Oh, shoot. Oh, well. Yeah, that's okay. We got our or is my pen actually showing up? It may actually be it'd be showing up. I was going to see. Oh yeah, it's showing up. Okay, good. So yeah, at a later time we've got our users, and they're going to ask a question to our to this system in the form of a chatbot interface. So this application right here is our chatbot interface, which I'll show you. You ask a question to it, and that chatbot interface is going to go to the Kendra search index, and it's going to ask, just give me all the information back in a search format from that index, feed me all the information back from my document set. Then the chatbot interface is going to turn around and send all that information down to the Bedrock Large Language Model, which is going to summarize it and build it and contextualize it into a form that's human readable. That's a nice little piece of human text that I can easily ingest. So it's potentially taking a lot of information and consolidating it down into a nice little a bit of human readable text. So that is our flow. This is here's the architecture diagram of this whole thing. I wasn't going to go too much into this if you're, but you can ask me questions about this later in the end. But the main things I wanted to point out is you've got users who are accessing here through CloudFront. This is our content delivery network. It's pushing content and resources, assets out to the edge locations all around the United States. So that gives you really, really low latency access to say content like videos, but also content like HTML pages and CSS and JavaScript and things like that you want to push out and get close to the user. We're using S3 here not only for our website, so the chatbot is actually hosted in S3, but the documents as well, like I said. The chatbot then is a combination of this S3 static content and then an API gateway that's implementing REST calls. Those REST calls are being translated into those calls that I showed you before. So the calls out to Kendra, and then also Lambda function calls out to. It shows here. This is wrong. I forgot to change that. That says SageMaker right there. That's not right. That's now Bedrock. This demo used to actually be in SageMaker, but it's in Bedrock now. So you can see these Lambda functions out here are the things that are handling the chat interface and responding inside our system to affect all that different functionality we want. So it's kind of a flow that's kind of going on here. You can see from left to right, pulling conversational history, invoking and pulling back index content from Kendra, and then invoking our large language model. So, okay, so with that, I'm going to move on to our demo. So give me just 2 seconds here while I flip over. So I think we're looking at it here. Okay, so now I'm in the actual chat application here. This is just, again, this is the chat. It's just a chat interface that I'm running here, and I'm going to I'm just going to ask it a question via this chat interface. You can see up here that it's actually a pretty full-featured little demo here, or a little application. You can start a new chat. You can upload new documents to the system. So instead of having to go through kind of back end and upload documents to S3. You can actually upload documents right here in the application if I want to, but I'm not going to do that. You can invoke different models. I have it configured for 3 models right now: Anthropic, Jurassic, and Titan. So you can play around with the different models and how they respond. And then you can log in and log out. So this actually has user interface control over it. So you can allow different people to have different access into the system. So it's pretty full-featured little demo. It's pretty cool. I'm going to just start out by saying, I'm going to give you a little funny scenario here. I'm going to say, I'm an airplane enthusiast, so I'm going to say, I'm going to say, and I'm going to kind of show you a possible use of this. So let's say I'm flying around in the clouds. I'm in my little Cessna Skyline, which is 182, and I'm flying around, and all of a sudden I find myself stuck up in the clouds, and I can't get down because I can't fly through the clouds. Now I can actually fly through the clouds, so this is not actually a problem. But let's say I could not fly through the clouds, and I wanted an interface where I just want to go, like, either through my phone, which you could hook this thing up to, or through some other interface. I just want to ask it a really quick question because I want to know an answer really fast. And I'm going to say, how do whoops, my grammar's not great here. How do I do an emergency descent through clouds in a Cessna Skyline? So I'm going to ask that question. Okay, so right off the bat, what it's doing right now, like I said, it's going to Kendra, pulling that data back from Kendra, because I've uploaded, oh yeah, I didn't explain that, but I'll show you that. I've uploaded a whole bunch of documents. I'll show you that really fast here. A whole bunch of documents I've uploaded. Here's like some of them. Here's an aircraft operating manual. So you can see it's a whole bunch of text like this, kind of hard to find stuff, but you can see back here now, it's responded pretty quickly with just a very nice, concise set of instructions about what I should do. It's even ordered them like a checklist. So this is really, really handy because I didn't have to go search around through this document right here, or even find the document that I wanted to find the document. And I've got all my documents. I just ask it a question. So really, really fast and very efficient. And imagine that you're in a warehouse and you've done a toxic waste spill, and you're like, how do I contain and put out this toxic waste spill? Or how do I repair this compressor, or this giant machine that I have to replace or repair? Or how do I operate the how do I operate it in this functionality or something like that? If you imagine, you got all these documents all over the place, and this is consolidated under one kind of chat, and it gives you the ability to get those answers really, really fast. So so the next thing I wanted to show was that you can kind of continue this chat. You can ask it more questions kind of in the context. So this is actually maintaining a conversation with the large language model. So so you can ask it questions as you go, like you're in a conversation style. But I could also, I was going to show you the contrast here. I've got documents in here that describe how to here, I'm just going to start up a new chat here. How to do the same thing from a Piper Arrow, a Piper PA28R. So it's going to now, it's going to answer now kind of potentially in a different format, but it's going to answer by pulling and searching for information. Oh, so it doesn't like my question. Okay, so I'm wrong. It doesn't like that question. Okay, so it told me that it couldn't answer the question. I'm wondering, I wonder if I answered it, if I asked in the wrong way. Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can change it here. Let me see if I can augment it here so that it might understand. It might not be able to. It might not be able to do this. What's odd is I actually did this before and it actually worked. So must have done something wrong. Oh, I know one thing I was going to try. It could be that the. Oh yeah. Okay. So I'll ask a different question. Let's ask a different question. How about landing? Oh, let's do this one. let's do landing gear failure and the Piper error. Let's do that. Well, or Brisk Island, we'll do that. So this is, this is kind of a similar question. Just these would be emergency procedures in an airplane. You can actually ask it other questions too. I'll show you that are kind of more concise. These are kind of asking general questions like how do you handle, so here's the instructions for if your landing gear fails. I'll ask, I'm going to do a new chat just so it doesn't have any history. I'm going to ask what is cruise, how about we'll do maximum cruise speed of Cessna Skyline. So I'm asking now just for it to pull one little piece of information out of the document. And here it says, okay, so this is cool again, because sometimes you want it to give you a whole different, a whole big chunk of context, a whole big scenario, and sometimes you just want it to answer the question. So in this particular case, I just want to know it's 182 knots. That's all I really wanted to know. So again, super fast at kind of understanding, and the large language model, it's performing that function of summarization, but also of trying to concisely give you the right information. Now I'm going to show you now. I'm going to flip over now. Oh, well, I was going to show you one other thing here as long as we're in here. Now I'm going to show you that I've got other documents in here that have nothing to do with flying, and I have this guitar voice box. I have this called a voice live, and so I'm going to ask it a question about the voice live because I've also uploaded those documents into the knowledge base as well. So the point here is to show you that I can have documents that are not related in any way, just a big document set that are not related, and it's going to find those, and it's going to find that information and show me how to do it. So here now it's just telling me how do I start a loop in my voice live 3. So just an example of that you can have a broad range of documents, your corporate documents on HR and policy and benefits and all kinds of stuff like that. Your corporate calendar, that's something I search for all the time at every company I work for, is when do are my days off for Christmas or whatever, or for Thanksgiving, whatever. I'm always searching for that. So that's a perfect use for this. I could just ask this chatbot for that information, and I could just go find it in all the corporate documentation set. Okay, so I was just looking at the chat here, make sure I don't have anything in there. Let's see, what else was I going to show you? You can actually, I was going to show you this, you can actually ask it questions that are outside of the document set. So now I'm going to ask it a question about how to play a B flat minor over F on piano, which is like a very funny question. And I just wanted to show you that it doesn't like handling information that is, because of the way I have this configured, it does not like handling information that is outside the set of documentation of knowledge that I've fed into the system. So that's kind of the behavior you want. You don't want it answering questions, or you may want that, but you may not want it to answer questions. This is configured sort of not to answer questions outside of the knowledge base. So that's the point there. You want it to stay focused on its internal set of knowledge, and then not get too far over its skis and try to answer questions that are not in that knowledge base. With large language models, you can control a lot of that, ability of how it, of how it's going to suggest information through the model. Because remember, there are two things that are happening here. The model itself has knowledge in itself, so you can ask the model itself, because it's been trained previously on a huge set of information on the web, or just out in the world. But you're wanting it to answer specifically off of your document set. So that was the point there, just to kind of show you how that worked. Now what I wanted to do is I wanted to switch over and show you kind of the components of this and how these are kind of coming together as far as supplying this this interface and this service. I did want to show you though. I did want to show you though one other quick thing. I'm going to go back to landing gear failure. We'll do that. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. First, when I do the same question here, I'm going to do the question here, and I wanted to show you what the two models look like when if you compare them side by side, just to see that the models are actually generating responses that are kind of different based on that model. So here's the response to landing gear failure on the Cessna 182, and the Anthropic model I've noticed tends to keep and retain a lot of this this ordered kind of checklist with the order and the set of instructions. If I switch over and ask the same question to Jurassic, so this is just another large language model that's very good. It's going to answer. It's interesting just to see how they answer the question differently. So the same information is coming from the same information is coming out of the Kendra search engine. So this is the same set of information, but the two models are interpreting that that context differently, and they're returning different answers, kind of summarized to the question. So you can see that this one kind of has a much more pared down version. It's got the same kind of information, little bit. There may be some information that it's not including in here that it's chosen not to include, but it still gives you an ordered kind of set of instructions, but it's not ordered like how Anthropic did it. So so just kind of differences. You'll notice that when you play around with these things, you're going to play around with different models and see with how they respond and how they are to the particular domain that you're working with. How are they how are they suited in terms of the language model and training? How are they suited to the domain that you're trying to work in? Because some models are trained on different stuff, and so you'll see some of them have strengths in different areas. So yeah, so I just wanted to show you that. It's very handy in the cases of these things. Also, I wanted to point that out, that it's got a reference to the document set that it's pulling information from. So that's also really, really handy. And now I'm going to switch over and show you the components of this. Oh, here, by the way, I had brought this up, just the list of connectors that Kendra has. So you can connect it to tons and tons of stuff here. All these connectors allow you to index content that's from all these sources: Microsoft OneDrive, Jira, the Atlassian Confluence, all kinds of stuff. So so here, I'm going to switch now over to, I'm going to sign back in here. And I'm going to show you, first of all, what that looks like, what the components of this look like inside the AWS console. To reiterate, what we were looking at there was an application that is running in AWS, but we're looking at the user interface of that. So now I'm going to show you in the AWS console. I'm going to show you what these things look like from a component standpoint. So first, I wanted to look at Kendra. I always point this out, but you've got this quick little access over here. I've got Kendra here, but I'm going to show you up here just for giggles. I'm going to show you how to do it if it doesn't show up down there. You can just type or start typing the beginning of the thing like Kendra, like that. First one that comes up is got a blue box around it. You can just hit enter and it'll go there. I like all these power user commands. You'll see in the Kendra console, you'll see all your indexes that you have. You can have different indexes over different document sets if you want. I only have one, and I'm going to go in here, and you'll see this is kind of the Kendra console page for this document index. It shows how many documents I've got uploaded. I've got 20 documents uploaded. You can obviously have thousands and thousands of documents that are indexed into Kendra. And it gives you some stats for monitoring the queries and things like that. Kendra is a full service thing. You can design the user interface to the search engine. I went over this all in that previous session, so I won't spend a lot of time there. You can just go look over there. I'm just going to show you in here. You can come right in here and you can just search right in the Kendra console just to test out how it's working. And I'm gonna let's see, get rid of that page. I'm going to show you what. Oh shoot! Oh, did I lose my page? I bet I lost my page. Okay. Okay, hold on a second. I'm going to go back over there. I may have closed my page here. Let's go back to Kendra. Let me use the shortcut. Go over to my indexes here. Whoops, I went to Bedrock. I wanted to go to Kendra. Okay, and I wanted to show you just the ability for you to search and test your searching right here. Now I'm going to execute the same query that I did in the chatbot. I just wanted to show you what that looked like, how Kendra returns that, because again, this is just internal corporate search engine here. So now you can see this looks like a normal search engine. It returns me a whole bunch of documents that it thinks are correlated by its index system in to the question I'm asking here. And you don't even have to, I'm asking a question, but that's not really, you really, I mean, other than until recently, you didn't really ask questions of search engine. So I'll put it in kind of more in the terms of a search engine. I would typically, if I were going to search this in Google, I'd say landing gear failure on a Cessna Skyline is what I would say. Like if I were going to search this in Google, or internally in Kendra on my document set, this is how I do a search. So again, you'll see it's just returning you each of the things in a normal search engine style. And so that's what's happening. The app is then querying Kendra. It's pulling all this information back. It takes that information just as it is. It takes that search information, runs it off to the large language model, and then the large language model summarizes and then spits back a summarized version. So it's if you're working through and you're using this technique internally inside your company, this can help you kind of see where are my documents, where's the data being fed from my documents, where's that coming from? There's all kinds of fancy stuff you can do here with Kendra with tuning words and tuning prioritizing other documents over other documents. I'm not going to get into that, but that's all stuff you can do. Kendra is a super powerful internal corporate search engine. So if you're interested, you should definitely take a look at that. Okay, now I'm going to show you Bedrock because this is the coolest part of the whole thing. Bedrock gives you internally in the console, so in your AWS console, it gives you the ability not only to look at the different models that you have and see what models you're kind of using. These are all the models that I've configured in here, but it has it's got an example section where you can show an example piece of text. It shows you the API request that's made, so you can actually just copy and paste this out of here and use that as part of your API request when you're coding up an interface. But the other thing I was going to show you then was it's got this playground right here where you can play around with these different models. So this is like the coolest part. From a developer standpoint or from just a kind of data science standpoint, I can just choose a model here and I can just type something in here and oh yeah, I got to choose a model, and there's different versions of models. I'm going to choose that, and I'm just going to say write a story about a dog that has to emergency land an airplane. So it's going to use the Anthropic thing, and you're going to see it's just going to sit here and spew this story out to me that's just making up on the fly. So this is really the kind of generative AI um, traditional use case here, right? Where you're asking it to gin something up from a very simple statement. And so it's kind of streaming this story back to me, which is also cool. You see it kind of streaming it back as it's kind of generating it. So you can see it's funny every time I do this. The story is like slightly different, but it's really funny to see these stories. But you can do all kinds of generative text things here. Sometimes you can do something like write sample resume for Chris Bladon, so AWS solution architect. I mean, this thing, if you've ever played around with these things, it's just like endless amounts of fun just playing around with them. See, it's just making all this up right now. So this is actually super funny to watch it do this. This is not actual based on any actual web search. It's not based on me. It just makes it up. So super cool and very fun to play with. And like I said before, I was talking about this over here on the right. There's a bunch of controls you can kind of control in the model itself. One of them is, I wasn't going to go too much into these, but one of them is the temperature, and that's kind of like how it's kind of like how what they call kind of hallucinating, how inventive or how creative this thing's going to get, and how it's just going to make stuff up, how much that's going to do it. If you drop it all the way down to 0, it won't do that at all, so it won't make anything up. But here it's all it's cranked all the way up to 1, so that means it's going to make just everything up on the fly. So that's really fun to play with. There's also I mentioned Stability AI. The ability to generate logos and images, so you can play around with that here too. So you can say something like, let's see, picture of let's see, dog playing baseball guitar. I'm just going to make stuff up just for absurdity and see what it can actually do. I haven't actually tried these, but oh yeah, there. So so I basically just made something up, and so it's basically trying to fuse all of these things together, and it can actually generate images, just of all these ideas. So the point here is not really to talk about the large language models so much. The point here is really to focus on the fact that Bedrock gives you the ability to play around in the console with these concepts. And again, you're not running models on your behalf, so you're not running 24/7 models that you have to pay for. You're just paying for this like on a per use basis. You can look at the AWS Bedrock pricing. It's like it's like micro charges for each individual thing that you do. So it's like little tiny prices, like fractions of a cent per per like token and things like that has come back. I didn't want to get too much into that, but the point here is to enable you, as you kind of experiment with and learn Gen AI, is for you to be able to go in, play around with these things, get ideas, experiment with the differences in models, and see what those how those differences kind of translate into the domain of what you're trying to accomplish. So so I urge everybody, if you don't have an AWS account, you can get right in there right now, create an account. AWS has a free tier of its kind of other services. I don't think there's a free tier of Bedrock. I may be wrong about that, so don't quote me on that. But generally, there's a very, very reasonable pricing model for all these things to play around with in the console, and you can build all this stuff up on the fly if you're a developer. If not, that was the last thing I wanted to show you, so I'm going to flip over to that as my last slide. And I'm going to, let's see, I'll just flip over to our last slide here, and I'll put it up in full screen so you can see it. This link right here at the end here, where it says deployable demo, that's the code base. And here, I'll tell you what, I'll I'll paste this into, oh shoot. I'll paste this into the chat so everybody has that. That's what I was going to do. So this gives you the ability to basically go out there, pull down this this thing. I'll show you what it looks like. I'll show you what it looks like on GitLab. It looks like this. Here's the page, and I just wanted to show you what it's got a few requirements. You can deploy this from your desktop, or you can deploy it from a Cloud9 environment on AWS, but it's basically a command line deploy. You need Node, Python, and Docker, and then you need the AWS CLI. And then basically, you're just going to basically run this one command. That's going to be it. It's going to deploy that whole demo that I just showed you up into AWS, and then it gives you a URL on CloudFront. You just basically go hit that. You do have to create a user. There's a couple user administrative things. You have to create a user for you to be able to log into the application, because it's behind authentication. But other than that, it's basically a one-stop deploy using CloudFormation is basically what's happening there. So with that, I'm going to end a little bit early, because I definitely wanted to have a chance to talk if people have got some questions. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to everybody. Does everybody on the call, do you think this is useful? And did I give you something that you think you could put into practice today? And like, I'm interested to hear what people would think about how they might use Gen AI in general, or how they might use something like this today.
Anybody comments, questions? Well, I'll just add, thanks a lot, Chris, for the demo.
Sure.
I like this from the angle that, I mean, we've all been hearing about the cool things that the ChatGPT and other Gen AI solutions can do for the last year, and that certainly grabbed a lot of the headlines. What to me has seemed absent from the publicity and a lot of the conversation are the real world applications of this tech. Certainly we see a lot about chatbots, but other than the entertainment angle of people doing cool things, just having funny conversations, or generating articles, or doing their homework for them,
Right.
making funny meme pictures, things like that. I mean, there's a lot of entertainment, but I feel like the conversation has been missing a lot of just the practical day-to-day business utility that this offers.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that angle, and you
Sure.
the no
You're exactly right, Jeremy.
Whole accessibility dimension to it.
Yeah, you're right. It has a feel of being a toy, like Gen AI has a feel, like you said, doing your homework or generating blog posts and stuff like that. It's like it just has a feel that the only other application for that, other than those things, it's like, oh, you could try to apply this to your corporate data set, but how would I ever do that? It just feels very unapproachable, because either you got these chat interfaces to it where you're just asking it questions just for the, like you said, entertainment, or you've got to write a whole bunch of code in in Python or something to build a whole application in this and hook it up to your data and things like that. So yeah, I totally agree that that's why, and that's why I'm really like a big proponent of just using the easiest solution to get you up and running on say an asset that you already have, without having to code a bunch of things in SageMaker, so that's why, so literally everybody on this call can like start up right now. Oh, I see Michael Alves has his hand up.
No, it's okay. You can finish your thought.
Oh no, that was it. That was it. I was just gonna say, that was what I was gonna say. Yeah.
Well, all right. Here's the gauntlet for that.
Okay.
Like I've worked in companies that had few proprietary data sets, and then I've worked in companies with many petabytes of proprietary data.
Right.
My current company has hundreds and hundreds of petabytes
oh my gosh.
of proprietary data. Oh, it's actually not proprietary data, it's public data.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And
Okay.
technically it's public data. You paid for it with your tax dollars, but you
Oh,
don't get
right.
to see it.
That's funny.
Yeah, it is not. But the like, I mean, this is, I mean, frankly, this is a toy until
Hmm.
you have a egress mechanism that doesn't cost a gajillion dollars to
Hmm.
put your petabytes of data into this system. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I'm perfectly
Oh.
happy to hand you guys a giant check every
Oh.
35 days or whatever we have to pay.
Uh-huh.
But how does one get to the place? What's the path to get? Yeah, I know you don't know this. What's the
Oh.
path to get from where we are, where it is kind of toy-like,
Yeah.
to where my multi-petabyte data set is accessible in some way, in some economically feasible and time feasible way,
Uh-huh.
such that this does become valuable? Because
Oh.
literally otherwise the data sets are going to be how to land a Cessna,
Oh.
in inclement weather. I don't want to
Yeah.
be, I'm not trying to be dismissive of it. It's clearly
Yeah.
got a lot of power, but the
Yeah.
power comes from my ability to dump tons of random crap at it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. That is
and
the power. Yeah. Yeah.
so I mean, and that is amazingly powerful.
Hmm.
Um, I can afford to dump the amount of random crap that I have, and without all my random crap,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
then now I'm training the data set with whatever random crap I was able to deliver to the
Yeah.
machine, to the instance.
Hmm.
Does Amazon have a path? I know you, again, this is a hypothetical question, not a rhetorical question,
Oh, yeah.
not a real question for Chris Bladon or Karna or anybody else,
Yeah.
honestly. But without
So,
that path, what do we
yeah.
do?
You mean like a path, like, well, because see, I could say, well, one thing I could say is the first kind of thing that you could do as a first step path is, now this has got problems with your petabytes of data. Yeah, we'll discuss that in a second. But if you've got an on-prem data, say all your documents that you're talking about, Michael, are on are on a file system.
Yes, they
Right.
are.
Okay. So um, you can now it just hold back on the obvious problem with this, but you can hook Kendra up to that document set. So you can basically have a file system connector into that document set, and Kendra will pull that data back and index it, but not store the data itself on any AWS asset. So you're not having to upload the data into AWS. The data itself, the document set, does not have to exist in AWS. It
Okay.
just Kendrick just has to be able to index it. Now you got the problem of, again, now the problem is you got to be able to ingress the data in. Now that doesn't cost you anything, but you got to ingress all that data in order to index it, but you don't have to store it on AWS. Okay, so that's the first ability. Because Kendra can actually index down into your data center or your on-prem or whatever you have, and do right. It can index into Jira and Confluence and everything inside your data center, over. I mean, I assume your Jira and Confluence would not be a public, but over a VPN or something like that.
Sure.
So you can index down. Now the next step there, you've obviously got bandwidth problems there too, and you've got all that problem. But to answer your first question, it's not storing the data then inside AWS.
Right.
It's maintaining your document set, in other words, on-prem. The pathway that AWS, of course, would propose as a more expedient way would be and also on that concept, I did want to say one other thing. If you add a document to your data center document set, say it's on a file system, then Kendra, when it re-indexes, will only re-index the deltas. It won't. You can force it to re-index everything if you want, but it'll just re-index the deltas. So if you added a file or
that seems
changed a
legit.
file, right? Yeah. So the next path up then would be, and this is where you're going. It would not be other than for backup. it's like kind of doubly expensive for you to duplicate your document setup onto AWS. I think that's where you were going, right? That you just have
No,
to, right?
well,
No?
maybe not necessarily, right? Like, I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
like the idea here is really that there's an enormous amount of attention paid to large language model management,
Hmm. Hmm.
and the large part is questionable because
Hmm.
unless you're searching the internet, unless your training model is the internet or
Is the
some
internet,
pile of data
right?
on the internet,
Right,
then
right, right.
your the path to dollars, you
Uh-huh.
know, I
Uh-huh.
spend X dollars to make X plus Y dollars.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh. Right,
so
right, right.
the idea is, aside from driving a tractor trailer up next to my data center with a giant pipe, right?
Right. Which you can do.
Um, which you can do, right? Well, I technically I can't because it's against the law,
Oh yeah,
but
there's that.
the idea here is that there is definitely a situation in which this is valuable to people who have relatively manageable data sets. But
Yeah.
the value comes from those of us who have unmanageably sized data sets. The real value
Oh,
here,
is
the
unmanageable.
bigger your
Yeah.
data set, the more you need it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, right, right.
And
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
like
because it's harder. You can't manually
it's
find
not
that
comprehensible.
information.
The data we have
Yeah,
is
yeah.
the data we have
Right, right.
is even relatively homogeneous, and yet it's not comprehensible. I mean,
Oh yeah, yeah.
that's what our researchers get
Well,
paid to do. So
right.
I am interested in the idea that this is the future. I
Yeah.
believe that there is a version of the pipe that is larger that we just don't know about yet, and that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
I also know how physics
Well,
works, and so that's not exactly a thing, that
yeah.
I
Well, but see, remember that this thing when it's building the when it's pulling the I guess Kendra really is the when it's pulling the information from Kendra and then feeding that information to the language model, it's you know Kendra's performing the very, very fast search over your big set of documents, right? Narrowing down your big set of documents down to, instead of a million documents, it's 3 documents, right? So that's what Kendra does. So it's narrowing that whole thing down. So the bigger the data set, other than that, you've got you've got the problem that it takes longer to search over that. Kendra, that's what Kendra is for, right? Kendra's the internal search engine like Google on the internet. But so it's going to be really, really fast searching over that document set because it's got an indexed it's got the indexes already built into itself, so it searches very fast.
right.
So that's what
It
I'm
is the
saying.
index, right?
It,
I
yeah,
mean,
it is the index. So yeah, so that's why even if you got well, so I don't know. I actually don't know. I have to admit, I don't know if there are Kendra limits to the size of indexes and things like
sure.
that. If you have hundreds of petabytes of data, I don't know what the limit is. I could we could go look that up, but even with your petabyte of information, you can still, in theory, as long as that's not a limit on Kendra, you can still bring that in, index it, and now the searching right there is really fast. It's really just using the indexes at that point for
Right,
pulling
but
the
then I
data.
use a reference, and then I get a reference back to my original document or the original location that it was queried
Yeah,
from. And that
yeah,
internally, I get a
yeah,
reference back, right? I wouldn't
yeah,
get
yeah, yeah.
and I
You,
wouldn't
you
get
get a reference.
I
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
wouldn't get, like, I mean, I can imagine where I would get real data, right? I can imagine a
yeah,
situation where I would be able to get this data right here,
yeah. Like
if
this,
if the
it's
pipe is open.
yeah, yes, exactly. If the pipe's open, you've got a VPN open. Then when I click on a link here, that link is gonna just be the actual reference link that pulls it off of
Right,
your
right.
file system, or if it's on SharePoint or Alfresco or whatever, that would just pull off
I
there.
have a suggestion in that case, which is
Oh, okay.
give me an agent. Let me run
Oh,
an agent,
oh,
and then let
yeah.
me feed the results to you and let me integrate at that level, because this is
Oh, oh,
uh
oh, oh. You mean to feed
to feed Kendra.
the document
No,
originally? You
no,
mean,
to build the index locally and
or
then
to build the
feed the
index?
index to
Oh,
AWS. I
I
recognize that does not provide as many dollars of my
I
money
think
to
there is
AWS
a
as it would.
There's an API to Kendra that you can. Now I don't know what the full set of ability of that API is, but it does have an API, so you can interface with the Kendra API instead of the console. So it does have that ability. But I don't know if it can do what you're saying. I get what you're saying, but
all my non-specific whining is really just rhetorical. I think I just
that's okay.
My problem set is weird, and I get that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for people like the people we've used to work for, that data set is practically manageable. I mean, it's almost like now I look back at those days and I just laugh at the fact that it fits in one building. Yeah. So.
Well, and so if I'd be fascinated to see if you actually tried this out, just hook Kendra up to a subset of your documentation and just see how that performs. Just look at the performance of that, because that would give you a good idea of how this broader kind of system would work. Because at this point, the large language model is really just counting on the indexing and the response from Kendra at that point, right? Kendra's really doing the heavy lift there in terms of a big document set. So anyway, I'd be really curious if that.
Yeah, me too. Except it would get me fired.
So. Oh, okay. Well, there's that problem.
And possibly prosecuted.
So I mean, I can see there's pros and cons there.
Yeah, there's pros and cons. Knowing a new thing,
learning new things, having fun, and then getting prosecuted. I can see that.